we're doing a few more little modifications to our hand tool. So I've got my shovel, and I've done a couple things here. One thing I've done is from my previous version, I've found that this edge here, which I've creased, is a good splitting line between the handle and the shovel metal blade. And so I've actually built that into my model. I've also taken a couple, and I'm not going to go through all the details here, but I've taken a couple of the just single edges and used the bevel edge, which is this one. And I like to use 20%, and that gives me two lines that are close together. And it's a little hard to see here, but what it does is it gives you a little bit of a kind of crease. Let me change this just to shaded. And you'll see that if I roll this around, you can kind of see there's a subtle edge here. It's not hard. It'll be good in your hand, but it's just giving a little bit more design definition. I was thinking about doing that on the top, but I'm going to continue forward with this, 3D print it, and see if I like it before I bother with that. So notice here I'm going to my, oops, let's cancel that. Visual style. Shaded will get rid of all those edges so you can kind of see what you have, but you can still edit. I am going to go back to shade with visible edges. Sometimes these things help and sometimes they get in the way. So I've also put on a cross section here so I can make sure that my material thickness is relatively similar. And it gets a little thicker towards the back. You know, if I wanted to, I could, now that I know this, just pull this edge in a little bit. And I do a lot of these very micro adjustments. I was mentioning I build the basic form in like 10 minutes and then spend hours just the subtlest little tweaks for design. Like here, I wanted this to be relatively straight and then kind of roll off the edge here. So let's go to side view here. And you can see I've got a little bit of a curve rolling up. And so I might go in here and just do the subtlest little tweak. This is like hand sculpting. Okay, so let's just say this is all good. Let's finish this so you can kind of see what my intention is. Turn off the analysis. And it looks like something weird happened here. Let's see, I've got two bodies. There we go. So I've already used the material selection to have the handle and this kind of integral shaft going through the whole handle. So my idea is that this top and the bottom are two halves that snap together, and you'll be able to have different handles, different materials, etc. I've also kind of cut a little hole in here, and this isn't quite right because this would all be metal, but I wanted a little loop so I could hook it on to things or tie a string around there. And so let's look at our materials real quick. Sorry, let's get back in here. I want to brand this, so I chose a kind of a, let's look at this here. This is my idea is as a recycled aluminum. And so I can change the, oops, that's the wrong one. It's this one. There we go. I can go in and change the material color and stuff. And I think I wanted just something that was kind of a real aluminum would be a little bit there, maybe just a tad blue. So I just usually bump it out a little bit. And now that I've got this colored by, I took the big, the whole object and I made it wood, and then I colored with the faces option and used my aluminum because there's less panels here. I have to kind of manually, here I'll just show you. So when I'm on faces, I can color one panel at a time, whereas when I'm on bodies and components, this thing has not actually been split. And I'm just doing some rendering, so I'm not bothering to split it yet. So let's get a different material here. Let's go with a black plastic. Let's close all these. Just sometimes these get in the way. So I'm going to go plastic, scroll down to opaque and textured. And let's see. So I've got random polka dots. I'm going to go with random. And now if I try to add this on here, I would end up with having to redo all the panels. So it's actually easier is to bring this, drag this up into the window here, and then Option or Alt on a wake Windows, drag. So I'm holding down Option. I'm going to drag this on top of the color I want to change, and I could swap out that color. Now, I don't know what the deal is, but recently some of these things look terrible in this view. And so you really have to go to render view, and actually, again, terrible, but when I render it, you'll see. So let's just hit render, and I'm going to do in canvas render. And all of a sudden now it looks so much better. So I don't know what the story is there, but, and then I'm going to zoom in here just for a minute and just see what my random texture looks like. And I want it real grippy because I'm working in the garden or whatever. And so that might be good. So I'll let this res up for a second. And then I'm going to throw some two different ways to brand this, one decal and one emboss. Let's do, because we're in the render environment, I'm going to go ahead and show you the decal, because that can only be applied in the render environment. And I have to kind of decide, well, I do have to decide where I want to put it. And I think I've settled maybe on somewhere on the blade here, even though that might get worn off. Let's just see. So I'm going to go total top view. Actually, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to click on this little decal option here and go insert from my computer. And I forget, I think I put it in here. Yeah, so I got my logo as a transparent PNG. So this is a good decal option. So then it's going to ask me here, what face do I want to apply this to? So this face here on the front here, the big shovel blade, I've grabbed that, and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And now I've got the kind of typical options of scale on the edge here, so I could scale it up. I actually want to scale this down. And we just recently did some stuff on stainless steel, and we laser etched the logo in. And so that wouldn't allow me to have the white. In fact, I'm going to turn off. So I'm rendering right now. I'm going to stop the render because it's kind of making things slow. So this will, it's kind of interesting. It'll conform to the shape. I'm just kind of rotating this a little bit here. It looks a little weird from this view, but I think when I rotate this around, it'll look nice. So this is a decal. And let's get this in here and just get this rendering. I noticed that most of the time, I don't know why this is in Fusion, but the shadows, they start out looking okay, and then they, on white, they just pretty much wash out and disappear. And so either I'd like to choose a color background or slight gray, or even better yet, use the real background. So notice I've chosen scene settings here. Instead of solid color, I'm going to choose environment. And then the shadows appear better, and the lighting actually looks a little bit more realistic because it's matches the actual environment. And you can see I've got these kind of nice highlights coming down here, which you didn't see on the white background. And then I'm going to choose reflection. I like reflections because they also help tell the story of how the shape kind of is in 3D, because it's giving you an opposite view of it from underneath, but a very subtle one. And it does read. I think people do kind of pick up on this. So let's say I've got this going. Let me do one other thing. I'm going to move this scene settings out of the way by closing it. So once this reses up to, and typically I have this just on excellent, that's good enough. I was doing some other stuff that needed higher resolution. The other thing is this rendering gallery. I can close this, which will give me a little more space. I always render on, not always, but typically on this aspect ratio of 4:3 presentation, because a lot of my clients put these in slideshows. And this is basically iPad screen ratio. So I've got that. I could also go to viewport, which will render to your actual screen. And I can get it a little bit bigger that way. So if I'm showing this on my computer, I'll render it a little bit wider scale. So I'm doing that. It's I'm gonna leave most of these things default. This roughness is just something you can play with. It's the roughness of the ground. If only plays in effect if you've got the reflection on. And yeah, everything else is pretty much standard stuff. I tend to like this warm light background. That's my kind of default. It's a little here right now. The warm light is a little bit too much in the picture, but I like it when it's on the object. So I'll show you what I mean. But let's go ahead and save this. So I'm rendering this. You can see this has got a little stop button, which means it is rendering. It will be green if you haven't even started yet. So when I'm happy with it, and I don't actually have to wait till this is done, I can hit the capture image. So let's just go ahead and grab one. And I like to grab them every once in a while just in case I mess things up or whatever. Notice also that the first time I save this, I can just hit save. The second time, if I just keep defaults, it will write over it. So I need to change this title. But right now, and then double check, make sure it's on your computer. I've got this on my desktop and in the right folder. It will default to the last folder you opened, and sometimes that's not a good thing. So make sure you're saving it to the right place. So we'll hit the save. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate this by going to the scene settings and I'm still in render mode. You can do this while you're in render. It's just a little slower. But sometimes you kind of have to see where the shadows are going. So I'm going to rotate this and just get that hot spot on the background out of view. But I also want to look at the object itself and get some of that warm, cool. And like here, you can see this is a different area. I've got the warm, I got the cool, but I also got a kind of more reflection on the ground. So this is kind of nice. I've got this little highlight coming around here. This is helping define this little pocket here. So I'd say this is pretty good. So I'm going to let this res up for a minute, and then I will save that one as well. In fact, you can let it res up. I'm going to just capture that image as is. Sometimes you don't need the full resolution. So here I am in the second one. So a lot of times I just jam the keyboard for random letters. It just needs to be different. So this is 4-3, I'll say 4-3-1 and save that. All right, now there's another kind of rendering. So I'm going to stop this for a minute. This teapot render is a whole different world and a little confusing, but let's go through this because this is where we can get the animation. So I'm going to go in here and look at these settings. What I want to do is a local render. So that's going to render on my computer. Cloud Render will render on their servers, and it will cost you cloud credits. And you have a certain amount as a student. It says here 16 per request, but we ran into some walls the other day with that. So I'm going to go back to my local render. I'm going to choose this transparent background. What this will do is it'll render both on the background I have, but also give me a transparent PNG that I can overlay on things. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave the settings here to final. And here you can see if I choose this, it just gives me more options. It's not really that big of a deal. And then this is going to render down, and you'll see it appear over here. So let's go transparent background. Let's PNG. Everything looks good. And I'm going to do a turntable. I could bump this up. So if I wanted a really high-end rendering for, print media, making a poster or something, and maybe I'd go higher, like 3,000 or something rather. That will take longer. So I'm just doing a test. So I'm going to go back to 1,000 as a good kind of medium-sized render. And then these are locked. So the other one is going to follow suit. Let's just go ahead and render this, and you should see it pop up in this little gallery. And once this green bar is done, I can open it and look at it. And then I'm going to also render it as a turntable. That's the, and this is going to take a second. So I'm going to let it just res up. And again, if you're just doing a test, make it smaller and it'll go faster. So we got a few more minutes here. I'm going to show you how to export it as a augmented reality file, which is a USDZ or UDZ, I think the other option. And then you can pop it up on your iPhone and look at what it would really look like in real life, which is really cool. So this is almost done. Bing. Okay, so we're going to open this up. Now you'll notice that in a minute, it'll give you this little turntable option. And so I'm going to click on this. You have to wait for a second. Sometimes it just takes at first, actually, I'm going to save this. So I'm clicking the download and notice the file name is, let's just call this Scoop. Scoop 2. Okay, so I'm in the right folder. I'm going to save that before I do anything else. And then I'm going to turntable this. And so I'm going to click on the little turntable icon. And then here you'll see this one is, it doesn't go to your computer. This has to go to the cloud. It doesn't give you an option. 6 frames is not enough. It's super jerky. So I usually go to 36 frames. And I've noticed about 1,000 pixels is 14 credits. And it says maximum is 16. So this is in the field. Watch if I just change this to 1200. Now I've got 20 required credits and I've only got 16. So 1000 is a good default starting place. I think I eked it out a little bit more to get up to 16, but this is fine. So 36 frames, final. I think if I click on standard, it goes down a little bit, but I actually want this to look nice. Keeping my aspect ratio and everything all good, and then I'm going to hit render. And this is going to the cloud. So this little timer icon is going to count away. The nice thing about going to the cloud is that I can continue to work, and I'll come back here and look at this, and it should be finished by then. So let's show another option of how to, this is a decal. Let's show how to actually emboss this into while this is rendering up. So I'm going to go back to my design world, and maybe, I'm not really sure where I want to put this. Let's look at maybe right here. And I also tried one on the top of the handle, which is possible, but you might actually start feeling it when you're not wearing gloves. So I think it'll be less obtrusive right here, but it'll have to be smaller. And these are just Illustrator files I brought in. So that first one was a transparent PNG. This one I'm going to use an SVG, which is an export option. Let's go over to Illustrator just for a second. I was playing with some different brands. I was thinking GeoForge and playing with different fonts and stuff. Let's just take one for a minute. And what you would do is, I don't know if you actually have to outline the fonts, but I like to do that or create outlines, because a lot of times I might do a little bit of additional modifications, and I'm trying to find where, here it is here. I don't know why I always like italics. You can see my logo is italic as well. And I could choose an italic version of this, but then I have a little more control over how italic this is. I might mess with this R and make it match the G a little bit more. I might go in here, because once you've got outlines, I can do things like grabbing individual edges and messing around. And this isn't so much about creating a logo, but just showing you. Okay, so let's say that's my thing, and this little edge looks way too sharp and scary, but let's pull this out just a teeny bit. I want to do something over here. Maybe this is going to come down. Oops. And here I might need just to kind of create some balance between these two. So here's this font. I'm going to use a I'm not actually going to use this. I'm just showing you how to export it. So one thing that's really nice is if you got a page of a bunch of stuff is export selection. So this is selected right now. So I'm going to export selection. And it says asset one. So it depends on if I want this to be a single decal or uh, a sketch that I'm going to use to emboss. If I want a decal, I'll go over here. PNG is what I want. If I want to emboss this, I want SVG. So let's click that for a second because that's what I'm going to do. Export asset. So basically SVG is scalable vector graphic. And now let's jump back over to Fusion. And what I want to do is, this is kind of just the same thing as sketching. So I need a plane, and a lot of times I am going to just use the offset plane and pick this center plane and pull it out just so it's outside of the object so I can actually see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to go back over here. And so every time you make a new plane, it's slightly bigger than the last so you can tell which one is which. And instead of starting a sketch, I'm going to insert an SVG. And here, let's go insert from my computer. I'm going to go to my desktop. I've got my handle that I'm working on. Now, I saved that other one, but I'm going to use this, my other logo. Same process. This is an SVG. I'm going to open it. I'm going to place it on this plane. And you should see somewhere. And sometimes you have to scale way down because SVGs are really weird. They don't line up like you think they would, and a lot of times they come in backwards. And so in this case, this is flipped. So I'm going to use this little flip icon to flip it back. This is the scale icon, and this is a little bit frustrating because this is my center point, and I've got to grab that. It would be nice if you could, and maybe there is a way to do this. Reset that center point, but because a lot of times that can be way off center and make it really difficult. And I might even go in and create a font that has a curve to it to match this curve, but I'm just going to use what I have. And notice also I'm rotating this and it's kind of jumping. So I'll look at the angle here. If I want just a teeny bit of rotation, I'll see what it snaps to. This is minus 2.3, so maybe I just want to try maybe it's minus 1 degree. Nope, not quite 2. Okay, let's just go with that. So I'm going to move this down. Let's move it more central, right there. Okay. So this should behave just like a sketch does, and it's green. When you import the SVG, it is a sketch, but it's locked. Once I set go, it's locked. So as soon as I finish this sketch, I won't be able to do anything, but I can go in here. I can't really move it or anything, but if I go in here and use the, somewhere there's an unlock feature. Where is this? Okay, I don't know where that is. So let's just, I've been just re-importing and setting up if I don't have it quite right. Okay, so now I'm going to emboss it, but I want to use this surface. So this is really important. You can't just emboss and cut into this like with this tool, with the extrude tool. And I'm going to have to grab a few more pieces, but I'm going to show you what I mean. Is if I grab this piece and I just push it through, it will cut into there, but it's not following the curve properly. So they have this amazing feature, which I use all the time. And that is, I'm going to extrude, but instead of starting at this profile plane, which I'm doing, I'm going to start from the object, which is this thing. And so I've selected that, object is selected. My offset amount, let's see, wait. Oh, I got to select my profile. So I'm saying there's something missing here. So the profile, in this case, I'm just going to select the glossa letters. And those are actually connected, so it makes it a little bit easier. Um, and now you'll see my arrow there, and I can actually push this in, and it will cut into the surface and follow the curve. So it's not, or I could pull it out. So this is should be in distance. Oh, this is, so check and see if it's a positive or negative number. If I change this to a negative number, in this case, it will pop out of the surface. And I've got join, so it's going to add this to this surface. And then if I zoom way in, I can get a little more control. I found that you don't want to emboss this too much. So like 0.25 millimeters in or out is enough. Probably maximum would be 0.5. So there it is sticking out, which could be nice, but like I said, it might be a little bit more. So I'm just going to go 0.25 in, so 0.25. Like I said, if it's going the opposite way you think, just change the positive or negative. Okay, so that should cut into the surface. And spinning beach balls are never a good sign, but it worked. So if you ever see a spinning beach ball and it finishes, save immediately because you might crash it right after that. Okay, so this could be done, but if I wanted to throw some color in there, what I would do is go in here and choose my appearance. And let's just use this, actually I'm going to use an opaque plastic, or paint actually. So sometimes you can rub paint into these and then wipe off the excess. And so I'm just going to go with a glossy paint, pick a color. One nice thing is that I don't want red, but I can go ahead and do this and then change this material and it'll update. So now I'm going to use faces, and I think this should all be one face, which is really nice because I've got this little connector line. And then you'll see that now I can double click on this, and I like orange colors better than red colors, but not too yellowy. It's got to be a dark. All right, so let's take a look at that. Render. Get the whole thing in here. Whoops, and scoot this up a little bit. And here I'm seeing my sketch in the render world, but it won't render actually, but I'm going to turn that off just to not bother me. And let's take a quick, so you can see now I've got two options, either a kind of decal version or an embossed version. It might be better in the end to do something like this because this is the active surface and it'll get rubbed off. So and the nice thing is I could just turn off that decal just by clicking this. All right, now that I'm in the render environment, I'm also seeing that my turntable's done. So if I double click on this, I should be able to see my turntable. And notice the edges are going out of the frame. If I didn't want that to happen, I just shrink it down slightly before I rendered it up, or do a bigger viewpoint, bigger ratio on my screen. So let's do that real quick. And one other nice thing is if I set up my presentation, and let's go back to our settings for a minute. I mentioned that the environment looks better, but if I go to the, background and choose a solid color, but not white, something different. So in my presentation, I might set up my background colors to something very specific. And let's just do a kind of a gray blue for a minute. I'll apply that, see what that looks like. Okay. Notice that I've got some numbers here. This is RGB. So I could actually set up my presentation with the exact same colors, and or vice versa. If I know what color my background is in my presentation, I can change these numbers to match. This looks a little, let's see, I want a little less purpley, maybe a little more gray. And you'll notice again also the reflections show up on the color background. And I'm going to do one more thing. I don't know if this is, I'm kind of curious if this will work. I'm going to choose the depth of field. You'll notice everything kind of starts getting fuzzy. I'm going to choose my center focus somewhere in here. And the front and the back are too fuzzy. So I'm going to turn this way down so it's more subtle. And this number is super arbitrary. It depends. Sometimes it's going to be like 0.001 or something or other. And then I'm going to change my aspect ratio to the viewport. And I'm going to close my rendering gallery, which will give me a little bit more space to deal with and a higher resolution. And let's go ahead and render this in the teapot world. And custom PNG, transparent background, blah, 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 logo render. I'm going to change. So even though this ratio, this number is relating to exactly how much pixels are on here, I'm going to change this just to make this go faster down to 1,000 again. And I'm going to hit render. Okay, so this is local render. So now I can go back and open this up, and there's the second render. It hasn't actually started. You don't see the bar going. Oh, sorry, it's this one. There's the bar going. So as soon as that is finished, we can set up the turntable and go back and do some other modifications. And it's almost done, following the bars. Okay, let's open that up. So there it is. We got plenty of space around. And let's set up the turntable now, and we'll do again 1,000 by, we go back to 36 frames. Now notice this, see this is, let's go to standard. Let's just see what the difference is. So here it says only 9 required with the standard resolution, but I want 36 frames because I want that nice smooth, I think because my relationship is slightly different. It changed it a little bit, but let's just go ahead and hit render. Submitting to the cloud, and that's firing up over there. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go open this one again and just save it before I lose it. So use the little download as a video. And notice you had some different options there. And I found that new shovel, yeah, whatever. Okay, so handle, it's all good. I've been doing a lot more of these turntable things because I think for my clients it really helps them understand the three-dimensional shape of the object. Okay, so that's going. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Oh, I talked about custom material a little bit. Let's go back into our appearance. And I've got this one, which is kind of interesting. It's got a bump texture to it, the plastic texture, but I'm going to find something that's a little more, I think and the layout of this thing is really poorly set up. And sometimes even just opening folders can be difficult. So I want a fabric. I'm going to use a leather just because I know that that one works. Just okay, so I'm going to click on leather, and it kind of doesn't matter which one. So let's pick a leather here. And I'm going to bring this up here. I'm not going to apply it yet, but I'm going to open it up. And it's got some settings I can mess with here, but I'm going to click on advanced, and here is the texture of it is an image. And so I'm going to click on this, and here's the image, and I'm going to go to this where it says source and click on that. And I think, oh, I thought I downloaded an image. I don't see it in there. All right, I'm gonna have to go get that image again, but I can replace that image. Part of the problem though is that these kind of things tile really nicely. So they made sure that there's a repeat edge to them. And I think I'm going to do that in a whole separate thing. But basically, you can replace this with another image. And if it's a big enough image, you can kind of mess with it so that it lines up. So it's got a image and a roughness map. And they're based off of the same thing. You can kind of see this is black and white, a little more high contrast, and that will create the bumps and stuff. I'm just going to use this as is for a minute, show you how to set the, to just mess with that. But I'm going to use a different leather. Let's try, actually, perforated might be kind of interesting. Okay, so notice I click on the download arrow just to make sure it's in my local folder. And then here's where I've got this already all mapped out. And instead of trying to go in here and say faces and reface everything, I'm just going to hold down Option or Alt and drag it on top of the black one, which is my texture. And that should swap one for the other. And then so you can see there's some holes in the leather. But in my leather texture, if I'll let this res up a little bit, sometimes is not mapping the way I want to. So there's a bunch of different mapping options, and I can also see my fuzziness is maybe too much. So I'm going to go back first, open up the leather, and I want these polka dots to be way smaller. So I'm going to scale this way down. And I'm going to turn off the render and turn off the field, depth field. And you'll notice that these scale is kind of weird, but it goes really quick. So this is probably something closer, but look at these holes on the top are big, and then these ones on the side, they're kind of random. So what we want to do is we want to use the texture map controls, which is this weird icon. And then the selection, I'm going to select the whole object because it's really, it's two colors applied to the same thing, but the metal doesn't matter. So I'm just going to say, all right, this whole thing. And I've noticed that the box mode is the most accurate. So watch when this reses up. Now you can see the holes are all pretty much uniform size. There will be a stitching difference, and you can kind of see if you look really closely right along here. So think of a box projecting sideways, top down, front and back. There's going to be some kind of stitching areas. So this isn't perfect, but you'll see if I choose some other ones, they'll even be worse. So let's try cylindrical. So here's my object, and it says axis. So if I click on that, usually it will highlight my, come on, do that again. I need to turn on my origin. Where's my origin? I might be way off of, oh, there it is. Okay. So let's say this is the axis for cylindrical. And again, I can't really see the thing until I render it. And I might have some setting off because that used to not be that way. And then you'll see that those holes will get stretched in weird ways. And you see up here, it's tighter, and then over here it starts stretching as it wraps around the corner. So that's why play with these, see which one you like the best. I'm going to go back to box mode. Is this the right? Yeah. And so that's texture map controls. And a lot of the different materials that have imagery-based stuff you'll need to go into this texture mapping to set it up properly. Or else you'll see like a kind of a patchwork, weird kind of. Now, also notice that if I go back into that material, which is leather perforated, I can change the scale, but I can't change, there's no color option because it's baked into that image. So I could open that image by finding this and change the colors in Photoshop or something or other, but you don't have as much control over some of these things. But I do want, oops, cancel that. I do want to, I think I went a little too small in the 31, and I want to go up a little bit, but like I said, these change, look at that's, so I'm 31 to 43 and then they're huge. And if I go down to, let's say like 25 or something, I think that would be half. They'll be super tiny. So you just have to watch visually what's happening. 30, it looks good. Okay. And then you'll notice that they're actually hollow. So I'm looking through where some dots are lining up with the other side. So it may be a little weird. So let's get this up in here. And theoretically, I could have this with a leather where that's sandwiched in between two halves, kind of trapped and stretched over that handle. So it's not completely unrealistic. Let's let that res up a little bit. And then the other thing is, even when I do metals, I typically have a little bit of roughness, even if I wanted it super shiny. This is the roughness here. So if I go to super shiny, you'll see it actually gets distracting with all the environment. And so just putting a little bit of roughness will help dissolve that into a softer focus kind of thing. So this is less than I had. And then lastly, let's go outside and see, because this is an outdoor tool. So let's see what this looks like in an outdoor environment. So I'm going to go back to my scene settings, go over to environment library, and I'm going to choose the dry lake bed, but I'm going to keep the background blue. And the dry lake bed has really nice kind of chrome sky, if you will, where it looks like you would expect chrome to look. And I'm going to leave it on this blue background, and this particular built-in environment has kind of harsh shadows, but that could be a good thing. This one's a little softer shadows and more kind of cloudy sky, so you get a little bit more shapes in here. The plaza, these are all just the defaults. This one's like a lower sun angle, and you'll notice that the shadow also softer. I'm getting a little bit more reflection. So play with these. The snowfield is very soft shadows, and you'll see the chrome is kind of washed out, more gray. It looks a little not quite right for what we're doing. So I think either the field or the dry lake bed. Let me go back to this one because it's nice, harsh lighting. And you can also change the brightness of the environment and the exposure, which are kind of two different things. I'm going to change exposure up just a little bit. Dink. Or am I going the right way? Oh, sorry, I'm on focal length. I grabbed the wrong one. Here it is, exposure. So you can see that lightens up that chrome, so play with those. Also the shadow, maybe is not where I want it to be. Let's get a good angle here. I'm going to look at that little divot to make sure I got some highlight and shadow in there, but I can click on the position, move this out of the way, and if you'll watch the shadow go around and also watch the highlights on the object. When I get to here, this is exactly the same place as over here, so I'm just continuing. So here the shadow is kind of weird. Over there, maybe, somewhere, actually this wasn't terrible. And then I'm looking, like I said, to make sure that my object form is best shown and highlighted in there. And so I'm going to close these. This is good. I like this. And so you can either use a teapot thing or you can just let this render up. And like I said, when it gets to excellent, I can go ahead and hit save. And there we go. So I'm going to capture this image. Current. That first window, there doesn't even give you a choice. So, okay, here I want to give this a new name as well. So maybe this is leather And I'm going to do this as a PNG. Doesn't actually, this point doesn't matter. It's a JPEG or a PNG or whatever. Let's save that. And there you go. I'm going to stop here. I do have a couple other things, but I think I'm going to do this in a separate video, just so this doesn't get too long. Also, I didn't quite, I might want to do a render of this kind of back end and show off this opening here. And I noticed actually, now that I think about it, one of my students, notice when I'm rotating this around, I'm getting reflections of the ground on my object, but here this is kind of a weird view because I'm underneath it looking up, but yet there's a reflection of the shadow. So this is an artificial view that I can't really get. So one thing you can do, if I turn this around, I can see that I've got this facing upward because this is the top view. If I turn it to the top view and right click on that, oh, maybe I can't do it here. I think I have to do it in design. Right click on the top view. One more time. There we go. I can set this current view as front or top. Where's it on? So let's try front for a minute. Or actually, sorry, let me do this again. Oops, I guess I can't undo that. Actually, what I want to do is grab the bottom view, wherever it is. You can rotate it around and then right click on that and set that view as the top. And then watch the lighting change. And so now if I render this, this will look like it's kind of upside down. And the shadow will be over here. Now this is kind of an unrealistic view because you'd never have this knife, or sorry, the shovel in this view. So what I'd like to do is, if I'm rendering these things up, I'll look at the grid here and grab the whole thing and try to put it in a position that it actually would be naturally in. And here, let's do this. I did this in class. I'm going to make a duplicate of this by copying and pasting this copy. And I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's try this one. We're going to flip over. Oh, good. Yeah, it's going to do it. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. And here's where I really need to look at the side view because I want these both to be sitting in the same world. So I'm going to put this one, and like I said, I'm going to look at one of these lines. I'll take a bigger line and say, all right, if this was really an object sitting in space, it would touch, the handle would touch, and then the bucket would touch. So there and there, that's pretty close. This is -13. I'm gonna, this, like I said, jumps. So now, whoops. Okay, let's just change this to -1. Let's see if that does. Closer. Tab. Nope. Now I gotta go. It looks like it doesn't. So there's 0, and there's negative. Let's try that again. 1. Just hit return. That's probably close enough. So I'm using this line. Now this other one that's upside down, I'm going to grab that one and rotate that around. And sometimes I just do them in opposite directions, and that's enough to give you a more 3D sense. Okay, so that's that. Rotate this up. Top view. They're separated. And then the funny thing is, a lot of times, by the time you render this up, I might move this one forward to fill the square a little bit better. But notice that forward is not this anymore. So let's do this. over a little bit this way. So they're not lined up perfectly, but I'm going to okay that. And then, so when I render them up, I'm kind of filling the square a little bit better. And notice also, this is something that's super weird. Do you see that? That's the decal that I placed on there, and I turned off decals and it's still showing up. I don't have an answer for you there. So let's see if I just delete, whoops, I mean to do that. If I delete that whole decal, if that will, oh, yay, okay. Now the environment doesn't look as good. Not sure what the difference I did here, but this is kind of nice because it shows you the handle underneath and the handle on top. But let's go one more time, and I'll try the field instead. And let's go to my settings. And this might make a good turntable as well. Actually, I'm going to do this one in the, still don't like this, so I'm going to go back to the indoor warm. Because, you know, in this color background, it looks a little bit more like a studio shot anyway. And this one, you know, it's got a lot of extra room on both sides. If I close this, it'll give me a little more room. I'll end up cropping this in the end to get rid of that extra space, but sometimes it's nice to have that, the option to crop, as opposed to being stuck with something that's a little too short or too long or whatever. So I could put some titles over here, can put some text down in there. As soon as this finishes, I'll save this as, again, rename it. Ta-da. Okay, anyway, I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your time. Oh, actually, no, I'm not going to stop here. I lied. I wanted to show you the last thing, the saving this file as a USDZ is really easy. Just go up to, first of all, let's save it as is. This material may not show up really well in the USDZ, so I might be better off to change it, but, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I want to export, and then in the type, choose this last option, USD or .USDZ. That is the augmented reality. I'm going to throw it into my folder, and then just email that to yourself if you're on an iPhone. Why is this not exporting? There it goes. It will open up in the augmented reality viewer, which is super cool. All right, that is, and you can also email it to anybody, and if they have one, they can open it up. Sometimes I'll throw it into my iCloud or Drive or whatever so I can access it. But thank you for watching. Good luck, and we'll catch you next time. This is Brian Galassis signing out.